Thank you very much. Michael mentioned the Glazov Gang. It's a TV show that we run at Front Page Magazine, and it would not have been possible for not my producer. Annie, can you stand for a minute? Please give her a hand. She made Front Page's TV show possible. Thank you. And my show wouldn't be so successful if Robert wasn't running it on Jihad Watch every week. Thank you, Robert. On September 21st, 2013, the Islamic terrorist group Al-Shabaab launched its 4-day siege of Kenya's Westgate shopping mall, turning it into a literal slaughterhouse. The jihadists raped, tortured, beheaded, dismembered, castrated, gouged out eyes, amputated fingers, and hung hostages on hooks from the roof. Now, I'm sorry to bring this up during our lunch. I don't mean to be ruining our lunch here today. But the reason I bring it up, ladies and gentlemen, is that that barbaric terror gave the Islamic stamp to that slaughterhouse. Because in Islamic theology, ritual murders involving torture, dismemberment, and mutilation are considered necessary sacred acts against the kafir. Muslims' impurities are cleansed, humiliation is avenged, and honor is restored by the bloodshed achieved through mutilation of the infidel. The jihadists in Kenya engaged in another intriguing selection process. They freed Muslims and tortured and murdered non-Muslims. One of the survivors recounted how the jihadists asked him the name of Muhammad's mother, and when he couldn't answer, they shot him. Women and children who could not recite the Quran or name the mother of the Prophet were killed. The jihadists released anyone who could prove they were Muslim by reciting a Muslim prayer. In response to this horrifying act of terror, Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron led the way perfectly for the West in the context of the mindset that now prevails in our culture. He condemned the attacks, but implored everyone, begged everyone to keep in mind that the victims in Kenya's Westgate shopping mall and what they suffered had nothing to do with Islam. And as we know, this is the prevailing mindset in our leadership, in our media. When the media reported on what happened in Nairobi, the word Islam somehow eluded the reports and the reporters' imaginations. The jihadists were referred to as militants, maniacs, gunmen, etc. We know this story well, ladies and gentlemen. It's the story of our civilization's surrender to a totalitarian and vicious ideology, a surrender that is transpiring right now, right before our eyes. Because of the left's chokehold on our permitted boundaries of discourse, our leadership, in our media, in academia, in our higher literary culture, we cannot fight, let alone name the enemy that at this very moment is taking us down bit by bit. On the Glazov Gang this week, Mark Dury, that was on, used a very interesting metaphor. He said that there's a huge instinct in many people that when they're having, what's a good word to use? When they're being beaten up, I didn't want to use certain words, when they're being beaten up and they have a blindfold on, there is an instinct and a desire not to take the blindfold off, to see who's beating you and to try to save yourself. And so this blindfold at this moment is the metaphor to what's happening. The kidnapping of the Nigerian girls, when the leader of that extremist group praises Allah and talks about selling them. This is encoded in Sharia. In Islam, this is inspired and sanctioned by Islam in terms of slavery and rape. But we don't, of the kafir, but we don't hear this in our media. We know about the Tsarnaevs of the Boston Massacre, all the jihadi themes of Tamerlan and Johar, and yet the media the entire time was struggling. Was it the boxing? Was it the brain damage from the boxing? Was it the rap music? And this is what's happening because there's something that can't be named. And I could go on and on, ladies and gentlemen. I think Fort Hood serves as an example, that we had a quote-unquote psychiatrist in the U.S. Army teaching in lectures that acid should be poured down infidels' throats, and no one complained because they were afraid of being called racist and Islamophobic. And so this situation, this phenomena, is today making us vulnerable to jihad and making it impossible for us to protect ourselves from a threat we can't name and are not allowed to name. And so the most important part of my introduction now is that a hero has entered the stage. Robert Spencer, a New York Times best-selling author, director of Jihad Watch, which is a program of our Freedom Center. Jihad Watch is one of the most important sites on the face of the earth, just slightly below in importance to Front Page Magazine and the Glazoff Gang. He is the author of 13 books, and now his new book, Arab Winter Comes to America, The Truth About the War We're In. And the themes, in full detail, he's discussing and describing this phenomena that I'm referring to. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our modern-day Alexander Solzhenitsyn, facing yet another evil empire. But this time, this empire is the empire of the alliance between the left and Islam. This is an empire that, as we sit here at this very moment, is unleashing lethal blows at the foundations of our civilization. And all the while, this empire has succeeded in speaking the truth about its existence and actions, thought crimes and hate speech crimes. So what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, is that with its conniving and vicious agenda, this evil empire has succeeded in making the truth about its evil. It's labeled as evil itself. To oppose this evil is evil. And so saying the truth about Islam is now categorized as hate speech, racism, Islamophobia, etc. So I want to finish my introduction by just talking about Robert, what's happening to him, and who he is. Because these slanders that the evil empire is using are cast at him every day. The unholy alliance of the left and Islam have attempted to dehumanize him through their smears and slanders and name-calling. But I want to talk just for a little bit about Robert Spencer himself because, you know, I'm very interested in how the Soviet Union tried to wipe my father out of history and tried to dehumanize him for standing up against the Soviet Empire. And they have tried to dehumanize Robert. He's a hateful man. He's an Islamophobe, etc. But I want to spend 2 minutes, you know, if people want to know about Robert, come and ask me. If these people in the media think he's a hateful person, come and talk to me because I've known him for more than a decade. I hang around with him. We talk on the phone all the time. And I think it is important to say, number one, I just want to say, for people that might not know a little bit, this wasn't an obsessed man with Islam that wanted to come forward and just start hating all Muslims. This was actually a person that was on the phone brainstorming one day many years ago with a publisher. I think it was at Regnery, to my knowledge, my best knowledge. And they were brainstorming, and the person said, hey, why don't you write about Islam? You know, it's an important topic right now, etc. This is, in many ways, Robert is a reluctant dissident, and this isn't necessarily pejorative. What I mean is that Robert said, okay, let me take a look. And he came and he saw 4 marbles, and he added the 4 marbles up, and 2 + 2 was 4. And it was as simple as that. This is a person that came and studied something. He added up 2 + 2 was 4, and it was common sense. Islam, jihad, everything that he's added up. And now, because the left is in control of our culture, he is called every name of the book. He's been slandered. He's been shut out of the media, of our culture. He's been banned from the United Kingdom. But I know this person that's been called a hateful man. I've spent a lot of time with him. He's very funny. He'll maybe tell you a few jokes tonight. Has a tremendous sense of humor, is very kind, is very loving. And what's also very much impressed me, I have to say, Robert, is how nobly and stoically you've embraced and kind of accepted your persecution. I just want to paint a little picture about Robert as a human being that, you know, I was kind of thinking of even this image a little bit. Imagine you're in an apartment complex and you're coming up to each door and everyone in that complex is saying, you're a racist, you're an Islamophobe.